truth demands a verdict. Truth demands a response, but what it does demand is a verdict on what you're going to do with it.
If I understand that I have now bumped into truth, and if it does not match up with my worldview or what I feel in the moment, I'm the one that has to change.
Yeah.
Because truth stands alone.
At an allegorical level, God is telling Moses, make sure you bring me the best of your soulishness and the best of your strength, the best of your dependency and your submission, and the best of your capability. To me, the imagery here is really strong. You got to take your fivefold nature, your sensory nature, and go to the place where the problem lives, where the division lives, where the separation exists. The head that has caused the fragmentation in that nature lives. Put your hand on the head of it, and now it will be accepted on your behalf as at one-ment.
We can learn how to observe the feeling,
Yes,
without actively feeding the narrative.
Jesus said to them, you search the scriptures because you think that in them you have life, but the scriptures point to me. So the most Antikemi thing we can do is search Jesus to find out about the scriptures.
What if I told you you were meant for something more? And what if at first sight your birthright was inked in blood? And what if dominion was written in big bold letters? And what if we shouldn't just occupy but overcome? And what if the observation of opposition was us? Antikemi, the podcast.
Have you ever found yourself asking the question, what is truth? Where can I find truth? How can I get to truth? And most importantly, how will I know that I've arrived at something that I can call truth? If you've ever struggled with these type of questions like I have, this is an episode where we're going to go down that pathway and take a journey, hopefully, that we can learn together how we interface with things and find out what is true and what is false. We're going to also dive into something that a lot of Christians have struggled with interpreting, and that's the book of Leviticus. If you've ever done any type of Bible in a Year program, when you get to the book of Leviticus, it's really easy to kind of skim your way through it or even snooze your way through it. But I would say we struggle the most with thinking that Leviticus is all about atonement alone, but it's really more about how we approach a God that is holy, how we are able to come into his presence. And with that being said, how will we know what is true when we're reading something that is ambiguous at times or far apart from how we have experienced culture now in modern times with what they were experiencing in the ancient Near East?
Right.
I can't wait for us to kind of go down this path together. And if you have joined us, you are tuned in to Antikemi, the podcast. I am one of your hosts. My name is Jonathan.
I'm Schulz.
We're going to go ahead and jump right in. When you kind of mentioned you wanted to kind of like explore the topic of like capital T truth, that was like really intriguing to me. But what kind of triggered that thought process for you?
I mean, we were talking last episode, we talked about Epstein, right?
Yeah.
And then we were talking this week about the Greys and aliens and,
Fun stuff, right?
All the, light conversation.
Yeah.
And among so many other topics that we're all constantly A, bombarded by, and B, a lot of us wrestling with or trying to see how we interface with them, and plus a couple of conversations with some young people. So one of them is one of my own kids who's really trying to define that. Like what?
Yeah.
How do I know truth is truth, you know? And my experience of parenting has been that seems to run with every increase in awareness in their lives, they go through that struggle again.
Right.
And usually at an intensity level that rises right along with the new awareness level, right?
Right.
And a big piece of that seems to be, it's not just awareness that's rising, it's self-awareness, identity. And so that makes it a very existential issue. I mean,
do you remember the first time where I'm trying to remember the first time it happened, but I remember there was times where I became the observer.
Right.
To like what was happening like in the physical that I could like feel. And I'm like, okay, I'm brushing my teeth.
Yeah.
And I'm looking inside a reflective glass right now. My name is Jonathan.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, this is weird. Because I'm trying to kind of echo in my mind what I'm experiencing. And I stepped out of it for a moment and I was like, no, I'm not ready to like really experience it from like this outer body experience. Let me go back into the into what my lived experience, or the matrix, I guess you could say. It was easier to kind of go about my day that way.
Yeah, pretty similar for me in the sense that that experience of being the observer actually, in a form, started for me really, really, really young, like almost as young as I can remember.
Of course it did.
But it didn't feel great.
Yeah.
And I tended to step away from it. What I learned, I mean, extremely recently, through therapy, was that's because that form of becoming the observer was happening through trauma. That was a form of dissociation.
It was your brain protecting you. Yeah.
We're not, this isn't happening to us. We're watching this happen to somebody. But even though that is not a perfect way to have that experience, it's actually a brilliant coping mechanism. It's not for nothing that is one of the responses to trauma that people have. Because it's actually a pretty profoundly effective coping strategy. It can be pushed too far, and then you can wind up with fractured personalities.
Yeah.
And we know that has been used as a mechanism of conditioning people and
Activating them.
Yeah, basically, we talked about it in one of our early episodes. Yeah. Sleeper cells, turning them into unwitting hosts for other parts of their personality that are not the lead dog of the pack, so to speak, that they may not even know are in there. Often don't, and they don't remember when they switch. But yeah, it can be done so effectively that the right person can install not just the fractured personality, but they can train it, equip it, and then they can install a switch to turn it on, turn it off. And we all know about people that can be triggered into, but I mean, yeah, we've all gotten triggered, but we know that there are people who have handlers who can trigger them into a different persona that has a whole set of skills and a, you know what I mean, a way of interfacing with the world.
We're not talking about like science fiction here. We're talking about
At all.
This is, you don't have to take our word for what we're talking about, but if you take 30 seconds and do the first page of a Google search,
Yep.
you'll see disclosure documents from CIA,
Yep.
government mandated programs where they have ran these type of tests over and over and over again on people to see how they can activate them. And it's mind control.
Yep.
And it's very real.
Yeah, and it is messy.
Yeah.
It's not as clean as people think it is. You know, the people who do that, they will do different tactics to shatter people's personalities, basically break their spirit is what we're saying, or fragment their soul.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying those are the same thing. I'm saying those are potential outcomes of these tactics. Those tactics can be as they were in the very famous MK Ultra, which this might be too early to say that, but in the episode, but you know, as they were there, that could be extremely high dosages of a hallucinogen, you know, that are so overblown. The dosage is so overblown that they're not, it's not really going to be a high. That, I don't think that's the right word to describe what comes out. It's a crucible for the ego. It is the destruction of the world. I mean, it's like Noah's flood inside of a person. You know, if you
Just real quick, I just want to qualify where we're going with this.
right,
Because I already hear, we just need Jesus.
right.
Right? But the problem, and I'm not disagreeing with that. Yes, we absolutely just need Jesus and he is enough, right? But when we have people who are experiencing this very real reality of shattered consciousness, and all we are equipped with is just trying to cast a demon out of somebody. And we're not dealing with... Right. And we may not even be dealing with the demonic.
Right.
You're dealing with somebody's shattered personality that's been shattered over and over and over again. And so now their brain is literally their enemy to us, but really it's their friend, because it's like, wait a minute, no. When this personality comes out, they're weak and they're taken over and they're taken advantage of. And so this personality now needs to come up and take center stage, because this is how we stay protected.
Yes.
And if we have no idea how to interface with people like that, then they leave even more broken than they did when they encountered us. And I think we do ourselves a disservice as people of God if we don't properly put ourselves in the position of a student to learn a little bit of nuance when we're dealing with people who are severely damaged, broken, in need of healing. And as we introduce them to Jesus, there's nothing wrong with us properly administering like actual therapy and treatment. Take them to qualified people who are able to do that, you know? So this is why these conversations, I think, are important.
Well, you're being very kind and very gracious. You know, I know that sometimes you even will interact down in the comments with people who are saying things like that, and I get it, and I see, I understand why you do it. I'm too tired. I hit a point where if what we're saying is not for you, God bless you.
Yeah.
You know, it's nothing at all personal. If you came to our church, I would love to hug your neck. You know, we can worship together. I look forward to being in heaven with you. It may be a little different than you're expecting it to be if you refuse to learn any dang thing while you're here.
Said,
but
where are the clouds?
yeah. But let me, being as you opened that can of worms, I'll say something to people with that mindset, and I hope it's not taken personally. I don't mean it personally at all, but I'm just gonna, I guess, give you a little dose of tough love that you obviously don't have to take down. You don't have to receive it. But since my brother gave you the spoonful of sugar, I'll give you the medicine. People like you that you who are going to say, you know, why are we talking about MK Ultra? Why are we talking about mind control? And, you know, knowledge is basically a distraction. We need to just, you know, tell people about the gospel and love Jesus and go to church and John 3:16 and people like you get to live in that little unicorn encrusted world because of people like us. And I don't mean that ugly. I just mean somebody has to be there to minister to the people that came to your church and left without help.
Yes.
And it's not because Jesus couldn't help them. Jesus was helping them. But Jesus uses human vessels. Mm-hmm. And the Holy Ghost teaches people how to interact with the realities, the very complex, multi-layered realities of true existence, life in all the realms. Mm-hmm. And so people come to us not necessarily. I know there are people who are way more experienced and deal with way more tough cases than we do and all that. But our church has been known for decades in our city as a place where if you need somebody to get down in the trenches with you and get to the bottom of what is going on in your life that is causing the enemy to wreak havoc on a life that often has already been surrendered to Jesus, often has already been, you know, baptized, Bible studied. There's a level of sanctification grown in a person's life, and yet somehow you're still living in actual hell. Somebody has to be able to wrestle with the realities that you're facing and get down in the trenches with you and help you find Jesus. All we're trying to do is carry your mat, get you to Jesus, take the roof off, lower you down. That's all we're trying to do. Sometimes somebody has to get you to Jesus. And if you just walk by and say all you need is Jesus, but you don't have the requisite skills or motivation to help that person get there, somebody has to. And
let's play off of that example. That's perfect. The four friends with the paralyzed man, if all they said was, yeah, all you need is Jesus, and that's all they said, but they didn't actually take any steps to pick up all four corners and get him over to where Jesus actually was physically, and then not being dissuaded by all of the crowd. They couldn't get in. And too often, we're the problem. We're all the crowd. We're blocking access to Jesus.
Yes.
We're in his presence. We're having real good church.
Right.
We're surrounded. We're close to Jesus. But we're stopping the people who actually need to get in.
Yeah.
And if they would have just stopped at that, well, we got you as close as we could.
Right.
They said, no, we're going to find another way. We're going to go up higher and we're going to take the roof off.
Yeah.
Think about that even like symbolically.
Right.
This type of conversation is we're taking people up higher and we're going to take the roof off. We're going to remove whatever barrier and now we're going to lower you down to get as close to Jesus as possible.
Yeah.
And what did Jesus do? First of all, he forgave the man of his sins. He wasn't even there for that.
Right.
And that's what made the Pharisees the
truth,
most mad at all.
Yeah.
Not the fact that he even healed the man. It was that, who is this man to forgive sins?
Right.
But Jesus took that opportunity to understand and flex who he was as being not only God in the flesh, being the Son of Man, someone who is a emissary as a son of Adam,
Yeah.
to be able to take back dominion right now on earth. And that's exactly what we're trying to operate in.
Yeah. That Tamala Man song, Take Me to the King.
Yeah.
That I've had people carry me on their back into his presence when I couldn't get there. And I'm going to let it go after this because, like I say, instinctively at this point in my life, I just typically don't even interface with it. If you hear what we're talking about on this podcast, especially if you listen to a couple episodes and you still feel that way, like maybe we're distracted or we need to get back to the simplicity of the gospel or whatever, I just kind of feel like the stage you're at in your walk probably doesn't have a lot to do with what God has given us to be able to offer. And that's okay.
It's okay. Yeah.
I've been there too.
Yeah.
And so typically I just don't have the energy anymore. But before letting it go, because it is worth sometimes challenging a mindset. I'll just say, I think somebody that could say that at this point in the world that we're living in right now, with the realities that are present, and not just present, but maybe for the first time in history, certainly for the first time in a very long time, are not very hidden, very thinly veiled. I don't think you can fathom, if you're still there, I don't think you can fathom how dark the darkness really is. I don't think you understand where we've gotten to as far as this being the days of Noah. And just how intense the battle really is. And somebody somewhere is going to have to recognize that it actually is lack of knowledge that destroys God's people. And to the point about the simplicity of the gospel and just giving people Jesus, we have to address the fact that there are wolves posturing not just as sheep, but as shepherds, and being widely received and not really discerned for the most part. Still, to this moment, after 15 years minimally of unrelenting exposure, and the last couple of years, the amount of exposure that's taken place in the last couple of years is probably more than happened in the 13 before that. And yet, wolves are still getting away with looking like sheep and functioning as shepherds, and sheep are still going to the slaughter left and right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is about Jesus, and it is about the gospel. It is about the simplicity, but you can't speak to a lie you don't even understand.
That goes back to the whole entire what is truth? And how do you know that you've encountered it? That's the problem. Like, if you have encountered truth, that changes you.
Yes.
Like, capital T truth. You can't encounter truth and you not leave changed.
Right.
It just doesn't happen. And so if you are struggling with knowing and understanding when you've encountered truth, this is something that is going to really help you, because when you experience that, it should change you. It should start to manifest differently as far as your mindset, and you don't thumb your nose
Yes.
at these type of conversations just because you may not understand it fully. You're like, I may not get it all the way right now,
which is okay.
but something about this resonates with my spirit because it actually is true. And so whether I go deeper with you or not, I'm not going to be an adversary towards it, you know?
I think that more often than not, when people kind of come at discussions like these with those kind of comments, what's really happening is that person has been made uncomfortable. And so, and that's why I'm okay with it too. Like, if you were, let me say it this way. If nothing about the discussion resonated with you, you would have just clicked away.
Yeah.
But the fact that you had to stay and say something is evidence that it kind of touched something. It hit a spot that was most likely either triggered fear, confusion, maybe weariness. Sometimes I just don't want to wrestle with something. It's better to acknowledge that than to give yourself the easy out of just getting triggered and saying we shouldn't be talking about this.
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times what it is that, especially with church people, I think very often what it is a little bit of discomfort with the idea that what if what I find behind that door challenges what I think I know? And that scares people, especially when it comes to faith, because so many Christians are framing their faith in terms of, eternal bliss or eternal conscious torment. And so let's be honest, a lot of their motivation, whether they're willing to admit it or not, is just they don't want to fry. And so when they think about what, they feel like they have everything on lock when it comes to faith. And if somebody says something that makes them wonder if finding out more about that thing would make them wonder about what they think they know, that gets scary because they feel like, what if I wind up in the smoking section? I'm going to say the same thing I always tell my children. If there is a God, if there is a Most High, then the Most High has to be good. Because otherwise, we're not saying there's a God, we're just saying there's a devil. We're just saying there's a Satan.
That's good.
So if there is a God, if there is a Most High God, that God is good and represents ultimate truth and ultimate love. Tell me that God is going to penalize you for eternity for caring enough about truth to stop and examine stuff that challenges you. Tell me that's how you wind up in hell. Really? Because that sounds a lot more like the devil to me than it does God.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people, if you feel a little fear, recognize that that's not God. That's not coming from God. And it's also not drawing you toward God. Let the challenge come. If you're in truth, it will be left standing. And if you're not, you can only be better off for finding out. Because if there is a God and if there is a Most High, you're going to have to get to truth to get to Him, to get to that God.
And that's good already, boy.
Right?
Yeah.
So, what are you worried about? You're scared that you're going to find truth? And a lot of times the answer is yes, because that would imply that you don't know truth right now. And the reason you can sleep easy at night is because you feel like you do. But maybe you need to wrestle with the angel tonight. Maybe tonight isn't about sleeping. But also, maybe you need to rest in love and recognize that the ultimate source of good and truth in the universe is not mad at you for wanting to know the truth. And you were so spot on a minute ago when you were talking about, how did you say it, that truth will not, usually does, or will change you. Once you've come in contact with truth, you will be changed. That right there is why Jesus' statement is so profound, that you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And I think people may not always recognize the implications of that, because to me, the implication is, once you have encountered ultimate truth, once you have encountered truth, truth demands a verdict. Truth demands a response from you, not a verdict on whether or not it's truth. Truth is truth, whether you acknowledge it or not.
It's already been established.
It doesn't need your agreement to be truth. But what it does demand is a verdict on what you're going to do with it.
Hold on, say that again. Truth does not need your agreement to be considered true.
No.
I think a lot of us need to sit with that statement.
Yes, sir.
I know I have had to, because we think that our agreement is necessary sometimes for something to be true. And that's why we struggle and we wrestle with something, because we're like, well, I don't agree with it. Right. Okay, whoop-de-doo. You don't have to agree with it whether it's true or not, though. Right. That's a you problem. And this is all kind of going back to, how do I know that I've encountered truth? Because if I understand that I have now bumped into truth, and if it does not match up with my worldview or what I feel in the moment, I'm the one that has to change. Yeah. Because truth stands alone. Yes. Yes. That's it. It doesn't need me to agree.
Yeah, you asked me earlier, when was my, something along the lines of when do I kind of first remember being the observer? Mm-hmm. And for anybody who's new here or new to these topics, when we say that, we're referring to basically degrees of consciousness within the human soul. With the lowest level, which the Bible calls being asleep in the dust of the earth, or Adam in the garden before God breathes the breath of life into his nostril. That lowest level of consciousness, basically the animal nature, it is defined by the borders. I think the best way I could put it is, it's defined by the borders of the body. I am everything inside of this perimeter where my skin comes in contact with the shirt and the air, and I'm everything inside of that. And I am the same as the guy that goes by my name. Like that's the whole thing. Like that's all of it. And so if I'm hungry, I'm going to eat because I'm not taking anything else into consideration.
Right.
If I'm angry, I'm going to lose my cool because there is separation between me and everything and everyone else around me because my borders are closed. In that level of awareness, ultimately, I'm going to choose selfishness 9 times out of 10, with the one exception probably being that often I'm capable of better than that when it comes to those that are bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, or I'm extremely tied to either covenantally, like your spouse, or through, close, friendship, or my tribe. I may do things that are somewhat less selfish or even at times selfless for them, but ultimately that's about me.
Yeah.
Because the only reason I would do anything sacrificial would be because I do see the connection between me and them. And so really that level of consciousness is a very high degree of separation. That's really the defining characteristic of that level of consciousness is there's a wide gulf between you and everyone and everything else. In no way, shape, or form could I conceive of myself as having really anything in common with anybody that I don't know, anybody, that I run into. Certainly not people that don't live in my neighborhood or people that, speak a different language, come from a different country, or are of a different religion. I can't find a tribe that we're both in. And so, and then forget it when it comes to, animals, trees, it's all separation. If I'm in that level of consciousness and I like cats, it's not because I sense that in some powerful, mystical way, we're both a part of the same beautiful moment where, the life force that God has gifted both of us in different ways, we're experiencing it together in this moment in some very real way. We're sharing this. It's not about that. It's just cats make me feel good. Again, back to me, right? I like cats. So there are deeper reasons why we might feel connected to something, but we're not aware of them, what those reasons are. We have no awareness of it. It comes out like instinct. So we don't even understand ourselves, but we're not bothered by that because we've never stopped to think about it. Why do you like cats? Because I like cats. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that level of awareness, the Bible, I believe, calls that being asleep in the dust of the earth. You're lost in the material realm. The borders of your awareness are confined within that. And then you can come up a little higher. You can awaken to a little bit of a higher awareness where the breath of God in you begins to move on your being, and you are receptive in that moment, and Almost always, bro. No matter, I mean, let's be honest. For some people, the first time they experience something like that, they may be doing a substance.
Yeah.
And they'll describe it. I just felt so. We were all one. We were all. They always use the same words. It doesn't matter what culture. It doesn't matter. And I'm not saying this at all to be in favor of doing that. In fact, I would be very careful with consciousness altering, mind altering substances. I'm not saying that legalistically. I'm just saying be very careful, because just because a door is there doesn't mean that's the right way in to a realm.
And there's consequences for every decision.
Right. Yeah. And for some of those things, if not many of them, the consequences can be dire. So I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying the experiences that are described are always the same. Culture doesn't matter. Time period doesn't matter. We can read the most ancient accounts. It's always the same thing. Everything is one. I felt this exuberance, this overwhelming love. I walked by a tree and I cried because I loved the tree, and we were, that's the stuff, right? That for some people that happens maybe through something mind altering like that, but for a lot of people it's something like the first time they held their baby. Or they got in a car accident and probably should have died. And when they realized they were alive, they had this rush of something that is very hard to explain, but the verbiage that always comes out is always about a reduction of separateness. It's always separation that went away. There's always this sense of some grand participation in this miracle of this moment that we call life. And you know what I mean?
I do.
The verbiage is always the same, and it always has to do with not being in separation. And in that moment, I would say, if you are fortunate enough to either come to the conclusion yourself, or if you're blessed to have somebody who knows something about that experience you're having, help you, discuss it with you.
Come on. That's special.
It can be pointed out, even if you don't realize it on your own, although very often people do. It can be pointed out to you that in that moment, you probably did not see you as everything that exists inside this bag of bones and meat. You knew in that moment that not only are you a part of something bigger, but somehow you are bigger than that. You are not, you are in that vessel, that body, but you are not that body. And we hear this all the time from people who have near-death experiences. How many times have you heard someone describe floating to the top of the ceiling and looking down at themselves, clinically dead? Clinically dead. Sometimes for a long time. People talk about finding out when they got back into their body that the doctors worked on them for 45 minutes while they were clinically dead. And the experience is almost always the same in many of the main themes of it. I was looking down, I saw me down there, but I was more alive than I'd ever been in my life. And they always talk about not feeling any separation. How? You're literally separated from your body. Could it be that something about the way we inhabit these bodies has a tendency to instill that separation in us?
That natural boundary.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we call that being the observer. It means you had the opportunity to watch yourself playing the game of life and understand in that moment that somehow, in some way, the eye that is watching me is not me. Me is part of it, but it's not the same. That the I is not the same thing as the self. That the self is a part of the I, but it's not the I. And it's super hard to put that into words. But when people have an ecstatic religious experience, what did they do? When they finish going through a box of Kleenex and all that stuff,
Yeah.
you know, we see it all the time in ministry we do together. People receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit for the first time. And how many hundreds or thousands of people have you and I personally witnessed have that experience and basically all react the same way?
Yeah.
Like almost to a T. There's uniquenesses for sure, but they're having the same fundamental experience. And they're always hugging all over everybody, snotting on their shoulder. What has happened right there? You are not in separation. You feel at one with yourself.
It's a different level of connection.
With your maker, right? Yeah. Totally with a lack of separation in it. So there's this if you can learn, if you can practice that, which is what I think we're getting at a little while ago, you begin to discover that the art of being the observer goes a long way toward relieving you of being a slave to your fears. Because
you have a different vantage point.
Totally. It's very different to watch someone do something scary or do the scary thing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Even if you have a huge amount of empathy, you can watch someone step out on a ledge or a lookout or whatever, and sympathetically feel that's tough. That's not easy to do. And yet be quite at peace, because ultimately it's not you dangling above the precipice.
It's why the GoPro point of view
right
experience registers differently.
Yes.
You can watch somebody from the ground ride a roller coaster.
First person point of view.
It's different. The third person is way different than the first person.
Totally different.
For you to, or even, you can even have the same experience, even first person, but it's different if you're on the front of that ride.
Right.
Or the middle of it.
Yeah.
When you're actually the first one seeing over the end of it, and you're seeing nothing but sky.
Right.
Before you take that drop.
Right.
It's a different level of experience as opposed to somebody who is just watching you from the ground.
And somebody who would never ride that coaster themselves can watch that POV from the GoPro, and it'll make them nervous. They'll have the secondary sympathetic, empathetic emotions, but they can do it. And they might even be entertained and mesmerized by it. But they would never in real life. So when you take that step back and you're watching the self move through the world, but you know that I am not the self is part of me, it helps. it helps you to be able to watch that character, that expression of you, interact with challenging realities without it destroying your peace. So that's one of the first keys. If we're really having a conversation tonight about how you get to truth, one of the first keys is you need to learn to take a step back and watch the self wrestle with the issues. Because you need to learn to sit inside of peace and love while wrestling with these perspectives, narratives, whatever it is, because, and here's the key, truth only ever speaks from love.
That's so good.
It never speaks from fear. So if engaging the struggle for truth is putting fear in the driver's seat, you're never going to get there. Fear can never drive you to the address where truth lives. So if the struggle to find truth has fear in the driver's seat, you already know
you'll never get there.
You're not getting there.
Yeah.
So learning to take that step back and realize that I, not the self, I am a child of the Most High, the King of Heaven. He has my back. If you're a believer, this should be so easy.
Yeah.
Jesus has got me. I'm okay. But myself needs to wrestle with some stuff. And I can acknowledge that it's a little scary without fear getting in the driver's seat. And so a person like that who's at that level, and we've talked about it before, there's a layer above that, and we want you to get there. That is being seated in heavenly places with Christ Jesus, when you are the awareness of the observer watching the character, watching the self. But let's just tonight, at least for now, let's just take the one step back and just realize that experience of being able to detach just that amount to watch yourself wrestle with challenging issues without being overcome by the fear and anxiety that could produce, that allows you to remain in the love of God, to remain in the love of Christ, which gives you a fighting chance of getting to the truth. Because honestly, I believe it's always either fear or love in the driver's seat. I don't believe there's any other. That's what makes the machine go, fear or love. Those are the only two fuels.
I mean, that's why I said perfect love casts out fear.
Right. They don't mix. They do not mix. And so fear can be present without fear being the fuel. Love can be present without love being the fuel. But whichever one is fueling you is going to be the only thing in the tank. And so, because in other words, love is not going to backseat drive for fear. Fear is not going to back. So when you get out of that, suddenly someone can make you angry and you may not respond in rage. because there's a layer. Tonight I was listening to a neuroscientist talking about how long it takes the whatever it is, the neural activity, whether it's endorphins or I don't know what it is, but whatever all gets flooded into your system to produce anger. Do you know how long it takes that to completely burn away and leave your system? So something happens that triggers you into rage.
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember, because doesn't that also shut down your immune system for X amount of time?
Yeah, but it tripped me out what the answer was.
Well, how long it takes
from the trigger when you get flooded with all the stuff that pertains to anger. How long does that take to fully leave your system?
I'm not sure.
90 seconds.
Wow.
That took me aback.
I thought it would be much longer.
Right.
90 seconds?
Yeah, because when's the last time somebody made you truly mad and you were only mad for 90 seconds?
Probably a half past never.
Right? I'm not a person that hangs on to stuff and I'm like, bro, I can beat 90 seconds on a bad day.
Yeah, that seems...
So what's happening?
I mean, is our emotions so wrapped up inside that experience that's what we're like holding on to?
That's definitely a big part of the key. Understanding how emotions interact with all of this. But, and again, you know, we always have to give this disclaimer.
Yeah,
this is two dudes talking. We're not. So, whatever. Research it yourself. We're not neuroscientists, but the basics are here. Really, you're operating from emotions if the moment that anger enters your system, you begin to focus on that anger or express that anger outwardly, you're actually functioning from the part of your limbic system that sits below higher cognitive function. You're operating in your emotions. But even there, the emotional responses that are triggered, that get triggered and produce anger, they're gone in 90 seconds. So what's happening? Because even the emotions die. They're gone. Totally out of your system. So why 3 hours later
we're replaying it? Yeah.
You know, mumbling to yourself all the things you are gonna say when you know what I mean? Playing the scenario. Why? What happens is that as soon as the memory is created, you begin to replay it. All it is you hit the loop button.
Well, it's locked in right there. Like that loop is locked in.
Well, yeah, that's all. Yeah. It's just like playing a lick on a guitar. A few seconds later, all that has dissipated. Unless you hit loop. And then that lick will play until the Lord returns. If you don't turn it off, that's what's happening. So the first 90 seconds is the experience. All the rest of it it's fully fictional. It's just reliving it. So essentially, the moment you move past that initial 90 seconds, you are now no longer living life. You're no longer experiencing life. You're no longer in the moment. You are reliving. You are stuck. You are spiraling, essentially. And obviously, there's purpose for it. I mean, that mechanism exists for a reason. If you observe a genuine injustice that requires you to take, extended action over a long period of time, you're probably going to need to feel that anger for a while. So God put the mechanism in there for a reason. It exists for a reason. It's okay when it is used for what it is intended for. But it's deeply problematic for basically all of us, probably most of the time, because most of what's happening to us is that we are reliving the experience. And this is connected to why trauma, starting from a pretty young age for me, would trigger me into the dissociative state that had me watching my life play out. And I'm forgetting even the term for it, because there was a piece of it that would come along with it sometimes, which is a little different than just dissociation. I think it's called depersonalization, depersonalization and something else, where sometimes I would also start to feel that either I or the world around me wasn't really, it didn't feel real. So it wasn't just that I was watching me move through the world, but also the world started to feel kind of not real. This is all the mind creating separation to produce safety.
Yes.
But that same experience can be really powerful when it's not triggered by trauma, when it's triggered by healing, so that you become able to move through this reality without experiencing it as ultimate reality.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, in my opinion, that can really help us start to move toward the answer, what is truth?
I think it's where we're able to truly, when we experience that, we can learn how to observe the feeling.
Yes.
Without actively feeding the narrative.
Yes.
I'm sitting outside and I'm observing, okay, these are feelings.
Yes.
And they're God-given feelings. We got to stop, for lack of better terms, demonizing these emotions that are God-given.
Yes.
Let's observe them, but we don't have to necessarily feed the narrative. And if we are finding ourselves doing that, we have to consciously shift into another character.
Right.
Basically allowing ourselves to not be attached to whatever narrative or whatever story that our brain is now telling us as a protective measure. Because it's now painted a whole new picture for protection, because you may need to be a lot more aware next time it's telling you encounter this type of interaction. So this is how you armor up.
Yeah.
And the danger, we've mentioned this before, how we differ between animals and how we don't necessarily come back online at a resting state whenever they've experienced a zebra experiencing that danger from the predator trying to dominate it and eat it. And so once they're back to a place of safety, they're able to just return.
Right.
We don't do that. We can be years removed from that traumatic experience, and our memory can trigger sight, smell especially, because we've discussed that too. The olfactory bypasses all sense of reality.
Right.
And puts you right back into that trauma loop. And if we are not actively playing the observer, we can find ourselves completely submerged in whatever reality that we have allowed ourselves to be told and believe. And this is why truth has to be completely discovered and appreciated for us to be able to move through this realm with any sense of accomplishment and not getting stuck inside those loops that we've created naturally.
Yes. So
That's good.
1 John 4:18 that you quoted earlier, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear. Because, I don't know if people clock that. He tells you why or how perfect love casts out fear. I think sometimes people read the Bible like poetry or something where each word isn't necessarily crucial. This is profound. How many times have you heard someone teach or preach on there is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear? First of all, a lot of people would take their text for a sermon and just take that part. They would just read 1 John 4:18a, right? There is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear. And that'd be it. That'd be the sermon for the text, right? For the sermon. But this right here says, hey, there's no fear in love. That's a huge statement on its own. Then we're going to make that statement bigger, but perfect love casts out fear because... How many times have you heard someone exegete the because? Because I haven't heard it. I don't think. Because fear hath torment. Because fear hath torment. He that feareth is not made perfect or complete in love. Torment. The root of torment is it's from Latin and basically Latin. Twisted cord. Twisted cord. Even to the point of being the same word as for an instrument for hurling stones. A twisted cord. Twisted cord. Also instrument of torture, a rack. Remember, that's how they would do that. Figuratively, anguish, pain, or torment. Listen to this. From, and I don't know how you pronounce it, torquere, but it's the word torque. The same word, torque. To twist. Hear me.
You enact a level of force on it.
Hear me. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear has the capacity to twist. And not only that, it binds you to that twisting. It's a twisted cord. It ties you to a twisted view of the world. Fear doesn't necessarily do that in the first moment. We can know even intuitively that the Bible is talking here about the state of fear, the condition of fear, the realm of fear, living in fear. Fear moving in you is not necessarily the same as you moving in fear. That's how to say it. Fear going through you is not the same as you moving through fear.
Come on.
When it says, when it says because fear has torment, that's telling you that this is talking about moving in fear, residing in fear. Because if a lion roars behind you, your stomach's going to twist. That's fear. But that fear is not a distortion. If a lion roars behind you and you feel fear, that's not a distortion. But what will be a distortion is when you wake up safe in your bed 3 days later, after the fear already saved your life.
And you're still reliving it.
After you ran like a bat out of hell and you got to safety, and you wake up screaming in the middle of the night 3 days later in a cold sweat, feeling the fangs of the lion in your neck. That is, what's the word I just used a moment ago? Distortion. Now it's twisting. It has got its claws into you, and it is twisting, and you are being tormented. And because of the twisting, you can't be complete in love because you're bound in that fear. That's what happens to our nervous systems. That's the whole thing. As a person who's battling a chronic state of fight or flight response that I got locked in very early in life, and having to learn how to come out of that part of my limbic system, I recognize now that a lot of my life has been spent moving through the world as though the lion were nipping at my heels, when it wasn't. It hadn't been in many years. This is what can begin to happen to us 90 seconds later. After that initial rush dissipates, after that experience in life dissipates, the emotion can begin to take up residence within us in a way that brings our being into alignment with that resonance. And now we're living in that state. And so fear has torment. That zebra that you were talking about a little while ago, it's not going to live in torment. A lot of that is because of the way that the memory interacts with, because this whole part of our brain, I was studying it a little bit, the amygdala, where a lot of that initial response, that emotive response is coming from, is right below the what's the name of that? Not that it matters that much, but the amygdala lives below the let's see if I can. I had a note of it. Yeah. The hippocampus.
I was about to say the hippocampus.
Yeah. So you got the little almond, which there's a reason why the menorah in the temple is shaped like almond blossoms. The amygdala puts out that emotion. The hippocampus begins to work on the memory side of that. So it's, first of all, forming a memory and taking in the full context of the situation, which the amygdala can't do. But it's also applying its own memory bank to the situation. And so you're really not, when the lion roars behind you, you're not only present in that moment most of the time. You're also all the other times that something dangerous has crept up behind, anything that can be related to it.
Oh yeah, I mean the body keeps a score and the brain keeps a record.
Right. So the first time someone you trust and look to for care and guidance and support, and you're dependent upon, screams at you or slaps you, you have one experience, very unpleasant. Brain and body kind of freak out. But the second time, you have a much darker experience, because the next time the amygdala freaks out, the hippocampus is going to go, oh, we're back in this situation. And that can put you in a situation where 30 years from then, you know, your spouse raises their voice, not even in anger, in passion, And the amygdala fires off, whoa, something's different, which is what the amygdala does. Because the amygdala's only question is, are we safe? Are we safe now? Are we safe now? Are we safe now? Are we safe now? So the amygdala does not like surprises. The second anything is different or new, the amygdala starts sending off an air raid alarm. It's the hippocampus' job to go, what do we know about this? And so 30 years down the road, your spouse can do something and get a response back from you that is just completely out of sync or out of proportion with what you did. And neither of you realize that you were just living in 30 years of emotion when that and memory when that happened. Fear involves torment. And so that twisting that takes place becomes a maze that makes finding the truth about anything profoundly challenging because of the way it lives in our brain and ties to our memories.
I love how you really broke down that word torment and took us all the way out to some of the root words of it as far as the twisting aspect. And also what came to my mind is if we're comparing and contrasting it with love, and if fear has this twisting and a binding.
Yes.
I wondered if love worked the same way, and it seems like it does. It's not the evil inversion of it.
Right.
Because Paul said in Colossians 3, let's just start at verse 12. So as those who have been chosen of God, holy and beloved, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing with one another and forgiving each other, whoever has a complaint against anyone. Just as the Lord forgave you, so must you do also. Pause. You've experienced a level of trauma. You've been wronged. You've been persecuted. You've been hurt. It's given some instructions on how we interface with that, right?
Yes.
Then verse 14, in addition to all these things, put on love. Why? Which is the perfect bond of unity.
Yes.
The complete bond. And so it's saying if you're going to experience all of these different things, and if you go to the very beginning of this chapter, it's talking about putting on the new self. You really becoming the observer and understanding, okay, I'm in this world, I'm not of it, right? I'm learning how to navigate all of these experiences. Go back up to verse 8. But now you also rid yourself of all of them: anger, wrath, malice, slander, obscene speech from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, since you stripped off the old self with its evil practices and have put on the new self, which is being renewed to a what? True knowledge according to the image of the one who created it. You're putting on a new self that is based upon truth in the image of the one who created it. This is not our truth. Again, I don't have to agree with this. This truth is coming straight from the Creator. And now we, as the Imago Dei, are now supposed to literally put this new man on. And then Paul comes down later and says, in addition to the new man you're putting on, put on love.
Because put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. Notice how often this word perfect or complete comes up.
Yeah.
But Paul's statement here is a little different. Perfect bond of unity. And that is super crucial to understanding. Because I think when we read unity, we think getting along.
Yeah, that's not.
It's so
That's not
much
what
more
unity
profound than that.
Oh, man.
Unity is the dissolving of separation. That's what unity is. Unity is living without separation in yourself, between you and your fellow creature, with God. And unity also pertains very directly to a whole mind. I love that you went to Colossians 3, which kicks off with, therefore, if you have been raised up with Christ, keep seeking the things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. This is so rich. First of all, understand that resurrection is not just final resurrection. When our body is raised up from the grave, yes, that's the ultimate expression of resurrection. But if you're a believer on this podcast, you already know that's not the only resurrection we experience, because we already know that when we died to the old self and were buried with Christ, that we were raised to a new life. We already know that. So we already know that when our soul was redeemed, right? But so much of this discussion is not about our souls that we're having tonight. Yeah, so much of it is too. But so much of it also has to do with our spirit. When your soul is saved, you experience a resurrection. When your body is resurrected from the grave, of course that's being raised up with Christ. But now we have at least two examples of it. There are other places that resurrection applies, and one of those is to be raised up out of the low animal consciousness of being asleep in the dust of the earth.
Yes.
Like Adam in Genesis 2, and raised up to a different kind of life. We've said it in our church before, but it just doesn't make sense that when you read Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 back to back, it doesn't make sense that Adam was a mannequin before God breathed in his nostrils. It's nonsensical. It already said in Genesis 1 that when God created humanity, he told them to be fruitful and multiply. That's not a mannequin. In Genesis 2, which I think both of us would argue is the story about the second birth. You have to be born of the water and of the Spirit to what? See the kingdom of God, which incidentally is also a state of consciousness, just like to be asleep in the dust of the earth is a state of consciousness. To see the kingdom of God, you don't have to wait till you die. In fact, you better not.
No.
If you want to be a permanent resident in it, you need to find your way there while you have breath in your body.
While it's still day.
If you have been raised up with Christ, keep seeking the things above. He didn't just leave it there. Where Christ is seated at the very specific place.
Come on.
Right hand of God. Make a note of that for those of you watching. Set your mind. I hope that somebody can grasp a view of that phrase, set your mind, that's more potent than think about. I feel like some translations have done us a disservice by saying think about things above. No, to set your mind, think of that more like you would tuning an instrument or setting a clock. Adjust your mind to align with things above. This is not just about what you consciously think about. This is about finding a way to adjust the calibration of your mind.
That's so intentional.
To higher things.
Yeah.
See, in other words, if your mind is in the gutter, we know you can calibrate your mind. You and I got exhausted. We have been like just exhausted for like 2 weeks now because of stuff going on at the church.
Right.
Building. we're out there working like real
Construction work.
like man work. And our bodies are not used to it. Our minds are, our bodies are not. And you said to me today, I've been hitting the gym 3 times a week, and I'm like sore in places I didn't remember I had. We're working. We're exhausted, and we got kind of silly. And the sillier we get, the more tired we get. The more the humor slides. Right? We already know what having your mind in the gutter is. When your mind is in the gutter, everything is funny for gutter reasons.
That's right.
For dudes, there's nothing that can't become a double entendre.
Right.
When our mind is in the gutter.
It don't take much. Right.
No. So we already know that you can calibrate your mind to different frequencies. So Paul is saying, set your mind. Don't have a gutter mind. Have a kingdom of heaven mind. Set your mind on things above, not on things that are on the earth. Again, he's not just saying set your mind on things above. He's also saying don't have it set in this realm. For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is our life, is revealed, then you also will be revealed with him in glory. And then he goes right on to, so consider the members of your earthly body as dead to all of these things that pertain to this realm, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life. Okay, bro. I love that you went there and that you pointed out that the imagery here is all about creation. Put on the new self, which is being renewed to a, not just knowledge, a true knowledge. What's this episode about? To a true knowledge, according to the image of the one who created him. And you said it's the Imago Dei. This discussion about knowing truth, it all goes back to the garden. Because we knew truth personally. Our whole existence was an unfolding relationship with the God who is truth itself. And something happened that caused us to be aware of many more facts and incredibly confused about truth and separated from it. So I was thinking on the way over here. So not just do you have the amygdala and the hippocampus, but you also have these two very distinct hemispheres of your brain. And I think it was it Newton? No, I think it was Plato, way before Newton. I think it might have been Plato who said that he was holding a walnut and suddenly realized that the mysteries of the universe were mapped out on a walnut. Just had this moment of like,
epiphany.
utter epiphany, realization. Why? Why did he recognize that? Because if a walnut looks like anything, it looks like a brain, right? And our brains in so many ways literally encode the mysteries of the universe, the whole way they're laid out. And those two hemispheres that are very distinct, we have what? A left brain and a right brain.
Yeah.
And the left brain handles all these data points. The left brain thinks in words. It runs algorithms. The left brain is constantly running risk analysis and reward projections. The left brain is constantly projecting into the future and trying to deduce potential outcomes.
It has to.
So, right. So when you are spiraling and running scenarios in your mind about all the different ways that your new business venture could go wrong, or if you have commitment issues and your heart is telling you you have found the one, but you cannot bring yourself to ask them to marry you because every time you start to think about it, you start to spiral thinking about all the stuff that terrifies you about that. Just know you are locked in a left brain persuasion, right? Like we all know people that are more left brain than people that are more right brained, right? But when you are living in that world of risk analysis and fear,
It paralyzes you.
and I think one thing people may not realize is what you need to understand is that your left brain in that moment has become so dominant that you've lost your connection to what the right brain is telling you. Because the right brain is living in a completely different world. The right brain is intuiting everything. So often, the right brain knows exactly what to do and the left brain won't let you. You're paralyzed not because you don't know what to do, but because you can't convince yourself that you can absorb the risk of taking action based on what part of you is already telling you you know. This is why so many entrepreneurs and successful people will say you have to learn to go with your gut. Not because your gut is infallible, but because your gut, your heart brain, your stomach brain is very closely linked to that right hemisphere. That part of you, that inner core of your being, the right brain and the heart, the gut, the center of your existence, that side of you usually knows a lot that the other side greatly complicates your ability to act on it or rest in it, right? But you need them both because the right brain is all pictures. It's not words and algorithms. It's pictures and senses, feelings. Everything sensory is talking to the right brain. And the right brain is getting a picture of the situation and the world from it. But the left brain is interpreting that and deciding whether or not it can take action off of it. And sometimes your right brain will get you into trouble. You can't be all right-brained or left. There are people who So when somebody is giddy in a relationship and they are just acting like, maybe it's a 40-year-old person and they are acting like they're in junior high, being ridiculous with this relationship, and everyone around them is telling them, you both have the same tendencies. You're horrible for each other. You're going to destroy each other.
Right.
You're dragging each other down. Your relationship is completely toxic or whatever. That person is their right brain has gotten so dominant that they have they're basically have no higher cognition about the situation they're in. It's all emotive. It's all sensory. It's all feeling. So we've basically described clumsily the ways that the self can get out of balance by being overly centered in one of those
Hemispheres.
or another. Looks like you're working something over in your mind.
No, I was just trying to coordinate in my experiences, how I've navigated this world with putting too much emphasis on one side of the brain. I just didn't understand it, I think, in my earlier days, and then putting a little bit of language to it has allowed me to start to again become the observer. There are times where I'm triggered by something and I'm able to almost immediately kind of stop and then back out and think, all right, this is happening. It's not necessarily happening to you. You're experiencing it. Experience the feeling, but now you get to decide how you react to it from an emotional place. And sometimes I'm just yeah, let's go. I'm going to make a decision to react how I want to react because whatever dopamine is being released feels good enough for me to just act on what I want to act on, as opposed to having a little bit more of a critical thinking and trying to count the cost of whatever I'm going to engage in. Not always bad, but it could just be something that, it could just be a craving.
Right.
You know what I mean? Something as simple as okay, are you going to indulge or are you going to make a different decision? The choice is yours.
Yeah. The dopaminergic thing for sure. Mm-hmm. Also, you can get so locked in trauma. You know what I mean? That you in that case, often it'll be the right brain. Mm-hmm. You're just reacting completely emotively, either because of reward, like you're saying, dopaminergic, or because of cortisol, fight or flight. You know what I mean? All those things that tend to cause us to function out of one side or the other, almost to the exclusion. We tend to wind up in one hemisphere or the other, almost to the exclusion of the other. So we're off kilter. We're not on an even kilter. Mm-hmm. And I know one of the big places that coordinates all of this is the frontal cortex. And in my case, and I suspect you may have similar stuff going on, but it is definitely different. But in my case, a big part of the whole ADHD thing is the frontal cortex really doesn't do its job. Basically, the way it's been explained to me is my brain is a company where the CEO doesn't come into work. So nobody's casting vision. Nobody is making sure emails get answered on time and all the employees come in. Mm-hmm. So for me, like, it's very hard for me to decide. Like, delayed gratification is a huge challenge.
So what you're saying is that your brain is like Israel building the golden calf because
Right.
Moses went on the mountain too long.
Yeah. So a lot of times for me, my brain is like, so I tend to be very right-brained. I can definitely analyze, but I'm a big feeler. And so I don't tend to spend much time. You know, you've pointed out before, like, that you've joked about, but you've also sometimes genuinely, like, given me my flowers off the back of having kind of mastered the ruthless elimination of hurry.
Like no other person that I know. It's amazing. It's amazing. My God.
Brooke will cuss when we get to this part of the episode. It's true, though, because there is no part of me that tells me to panic because we're not going to get there in time.
I don't understand.
It just doesn't, it's not there.
That does not compute to me. I think I'm on the other side of it where there's a level of like anxious energy that I'm having to. I mean, all jokes aside,
Right.
I have literally learned from watching you of like, oh, it really is going to be okay.
Right.
And you gained nothing, Jonathan, from dancing in that nervous energy leading up to the thing. And that was kind of like a fear loop. And so enough times of being there, I'm not going to make it in time. Will kind of lock you there where your brain starts to now put like checkpoints of like, okay, you get to this point, you know what's going to happen, even though it's never quite happened like that before. But that's how it's protecting you. And you're saying that those checkpoints just don't exist because it just going to happen when it happens.
Especially for people like you who are very disciplined and tend to, you get up when you should get up to get where you're going. And you, like, for me, one thing that's frustrating is it doesn't matter. From what I can tell, it doesn't matter if I leave myself 45 minutes or 3 hours to get ready. I will be ready exactly at the same time. Like, I kid you not. It defies understanding.
I'm laughing because I get it, but I don't get it. Like,
because I cannot convince myself. If I leave myself 3 hours, the only thing my brain hears is, psh, we're good.
We got 3 hours. Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
But you're right. It does. There is a little bit of a superpower in it. It's just that in order to be really useful, that superpower would need to be blended with the other part that y'all have. So here's what bothers me from my vantage point. It bothers me terribly that with all my ruthless and elimination of hurry, and I'm not going to be in anxiety about it, until it's the last minute, and then it's all hell breaks loose and it's full panic mode, and then I thrive. I get it done.
Yeah.
And I'm actually in a process right now of trying to train myself to hit that panic button when I have enough time to get ready. That's the hard part. I have to find a way to convince myself that the time to panic is right when I have enough time to get ready. But
So you merge the two.
right. But I watch y'all who do leave yourself enough time, and you are moving along, and you're still locked in anxiety about being late. That's the part that bothers me.
There you go. So it's like, what's the point?
Right. Watching people like you and my wife, I'm like, we have to, there's somewhere right in between the two of us.
I agree.
You have to be able to function the way you do, where the trains run on time, with the peace that I have. And I have to be able to function with the peace that I have, but where the trains run on time.
And that's what Jesus, I think, modeled the best. Why he was able to hear the news, Lazarus is sick, and for him to be like, noted.
Yep.
And go about his day, or even being asleep on the boat.
Yep.
While the disciples are freaking out. And very real danger is happening. Like, these are not just men who are unlearned on the seas and a little storm kicks up and they're going to panic. Like,
right.
No, this was something that needed the proper amount of response as far as alarm is concerned.
Right.
And they're recognizing, like, wait a minute, we got the creator of the wind and the waves on the ship, and he's not appropriately responding.
Right.
Don't you care?
Right.
That we're going to die? You know what I mean? So it's like,
oh, I do.
Yeah, he operates in that beautiful, very centered place of recognizing the urgency and also recognizing, like, it's all going to be okay. Man.
It's such a good example you bringing up Lazarus, because Jesus arrives very obviously, deliberately a day late. Not just late to heal him, late for resurrecting him. Like,
his spirit had already left, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cells had all shut down. His spirit was gone. And, you know, I think when they came out to him and were pretty upset with him about, if you'd been here, what did he say? Didn't he say, where is he?
Yeah.
Show me where he's laying. Show me where he's laying. Mm-hmm. Okay. Again, even his response there, to not get caught up in that in any way. And then goes to the grave and makes this wild statement. Father, I know you already heard me.
Yeah.
First of all, he stops and grieves, famously.
Yeah.
He gets to the grave and takes the time to grieve. I don't think people know what to do with that sometimes, and a lot of us have preached about it. Certainly you and I both have. Mm-hmm. But just, it's worth noting, if you don't deal with your emotions, they will get stuck. So even with knowing all of he had it all under control, but he did
do the thing,
acknowledge and express the emotions, because he's having the human experience. And so it's really important to realize that walking by faith does not mean
you eliminate. Yeah.
You're going to have to address the emotions. And so he does that, and then he makes this statement. I know you already heard me. I think there's probably two main ways that I can think of that you could interpret that. One is Jesus already spoke to the Father about this. And that may very well be true. I kind of see something maybe a little different in it. I think you're looking at somebody who has no separation from the Father. I and the Father are one. Think about this. Jesus experiences no separation in time. Very important to realize that. He doesn't experience time as distance because he's not living in separation. Remember, the only thing that's real is right now. Everything else is either imagination, which is the future, or memory, which is the past. This moment is the only thing that's real. And Jesus experiences no separation due to time. He is inhabiting the whole story in the present moment. That's
crazy.
That's a level of unity that, like, we might be able to tap the edges of that in our lives and feel it, but to live there, that's going to be a lifelong pursuit to learn to do that the way he did. But I think also there's no separation between him and the Father. This is somebody who is living in the absence of separation. Total unity. Read John 17. So think about this. If there's no separation from time, there's no separation from presence with the Father, then Jesus can stand in the present moment and talk about a prayer he is about to pray and say in full truth, I know you already heard me. Because he's not experiencing the separation. Just deal with the time component of that.
Yeah.
That I could stand here talking about there and say in past tense, I know you already heard me when I prayed in a minute. But for their sakes, let me do it out loud. Okay. The power of a prayer that is prayed, standing in the answer. That for him, he was fully inhabiting the past tense realization of the answer to a prayer he was about to pray. Now that tells you something about the mechanism of the miraculous. That if you want to raise the dead, you have to be able to say, and it wasn't even really a prayer, it was a declaration. Lazarus, come forth. But if you're going to say that, you might want to be in a place of such unity, such lack of separation, that you are not in any way, shape, or form hoping it happens. You are already understanding that it already happened. So, I know we took a left turn when we started talking about creation. Paul was talking about creation. Then we're talking about Adam and Eve. Then we're talking about the left brain and the right brain. Well, here's the thing. Paul says, set your mind on, if you have been raised with Christ, keep seeking the things above where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Lord, help me. I pray I can express this. Most of religious expression is a left-brained approach to the things of God. Most of what religion is what happens when people seek to find the truth using the higher cognitive capabilities of the left brain. So this is how we can have Jesus sitting at a normal table. I mean, yes, a feast and a very emotional one, but just sitting at a table eating dinner with his disciples, tear off a piece of bread, dip it, and say to them, hey, when y'all do this, remember me. And now we have fought wars and killed each other by the thousands, burned each other at the stake, and split congregations tens of thousands of times off the back of our interpretation of how to eat that meal and what it means. Mm-hmm. And it's got to the point where we now package it in little individual cellophane cups with a little cracker on top and feel very strongly that we're the only ones doing it right. Mm-hmm. And then apply your denomination's version of that. The priest blessing the cup, whatever. The point is, how did we get from dinner in Judea with the Savior of the world saying to his closest followers, hey, when y'all do this next year, remember me, to killing each other, writing reams of dissertations and creeds, and we're looking at left brain overgrowth there. Yeah. We're looking at, it's not that there's nothing to be gained from analyzing that. Lots can and has been. But we're looking at the ship is listing heavily to that side.
Can't live in the left brain.
The bird can't fly because we only have one wing.
Yeah.
The ship's going to sink because we're leaning so hard that direction. You know what I mean?
Or you're going to go in circles.
Right.
Because you're rowing only one way. Yeah.
So what is that? That's fragmentation. Mm-hmm. That is separation. By analyzing it so entirely from that perspective, we have completely separated ourselves from the heart, and that's an important word, of what it's about. And that's how Paul was already saying in the first century, when y'all do, that's not the Lord's Supper y'all are eating. Because you're pushing past each other, you've got reserved seating for the VIPs, you're not letting the poor people get to it. That's not the Lord's Supper. Already, just a couple decades in. So then, so much of religion is a left-brained approach. Did Jonah really get swallowed by a whale? Well, no, you idiot. It wasn't a whale. It was a fish. Whales don't have the right bone structure in their neck for... Dude, if God could prepare a great fish to swallow Jonah, he could prepare a great... Like, what? I'm sorry. How are we having an argument about what species it was? We're talking about a man getting swallowed by a sea creature and living in its belly for 3 days. So... how are we having all the wrong arguments?
Yeah, the distractions.
How are we storming away from the Thanksgiving table because Uncle so-and-so doesn't believe that the earth was created in 6 literal days? And I'm telling you, bro, we can do some of that. The left brain is there for a reason. But what's happening is that we're trying to approach the presence of the living God from a particular door. And it's a door on the left side of the temple that we are. And then on the flip side of that, a lot of spiritualism and faith, spirituality, is so right-brained that it gets pretty dangerous. It's so intuitive that if anything in our knower is off, and we do live in a fallen world, we are born into a state of corruption where things can be off inside of us. There's no mechanism there to protect us, because if we're approaching it entirely from an intuitive, emotive, sensory, feeling side, we may run into trouble, and usually do pretty quickly. How do you distinguish between a divinely orchestrated spiritual experience and a demonically orchestrated spiritual experience? The Bible says that the dark ones can appear to us as angels of light.
Yeah.
So if we come at things entirely from that emotive, sensory side,
We're in trouble.
we get into trouble. And so basically you have a bunch of us that run around wrecking our ship on the left-hand side, and a bunch of us on the right-hand side. We have a bunch of us spinning in circles one way and a bunch of us spinning in circles the other way. And we both think the other is completely off their rocker. And so there's a huge amount of separation between us. And the whole time, the Word of God is over here saying things like this. Jesus said, the disciples said to Jesus, will only a few or how many will be saved, or however they said that. And he said, strive to enter in the narrow way. For narrow is the gate, straight is the gate, and narrow the way that leads to life, and few there be that find it. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except by me. What if Jesus is the way? What is the way? If Jesus is the truth, what is the truth? If Jesus is the life, what life? I mean, take that off the bumper sticker. I know it fits on your coffee cup. Nice. I am the way, the truth, and the life. But what does that mean? And then, what about this? Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. The narrow gate. Enter in at the door. But then, what about James, the brother of Jesus, says, a double-minded man.
It's unstable.
What is that, James? What?
A double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways.
Yeah, but
It's James. That's one of my favorite verses, too.
remember, we're talking about two hemispheres of the brain. Is it James 4?
Let me pull it up really fast.
Let's see here. Somebody's yelling it at the screen. Here.
We gonna find it.
I mean, we could just look it up. That would have been the thing to do, probably.
I'm gonna tap out. Look it up real quick.
It's not that long a book. You would think.
James 1 and 8. Man, my
See?
goodness gracious. Right there in the beginning.
See? It just, we needed the confidence. Okay. If any of you lacks wisdom, verse 5, let him ask of God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. But he must ask in faith without any doubting. For the one who doubts is like the surf of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For that man ought not to expect that he will receive anything from the Lord, being a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. But the King James says he ought to expect to receive nothing from the Lord. What is a double-minded man? Well, Job said of the Most High that he is in one mind.
Single-minded, yeah.
And who can turn him? Nothing that he desires can be withheld from him. And if a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways, and one who is in one mind and who can turn him is nothing he desires can be withheld from him. And James said a double-minded man should expect to receive nothing from the Lord, but is tossed to and fro and unstable in all his ways. I believe that in our fallen human condition, we are all caught in an endless cycle of leaning into either that left brain or that right brain, either emotions, sensations, feelings, or algorithms, analytics, and projections. What could happen, what might happen. And I believe this all goes back to Eve standing at that tree, living her life in the presence of truth and being tempted by more data points. That I could have this knowledge, not understanding that the data points require a metric to view them through, to make heads or tails of them. And you're going to lose the metric if you lean into the data points. And so if you let that analytical side win out and you chase that impulse, you're going to lose the stability that you've had from being present with the truth in perfect harmony, perfect unity with no separation. What good is all that data going to be if you don't know what to measure it against? And ultimately, the biggest human tendency is to make ourselves the metric. We become the decider. We become the judge. So what happens? So she partakes of the fruit, gave it to Adam. He does too. And a little while later, when God is looking for them in the garden, it's the first time we see separation. He's walking through the garden looking for them. And Adam calls out, well, I heard the sound of you walking in the garden, and we were afraid because we were naked, and we hid. And the Lord's question, who told you you were naked, is super profound, because what Adam had unintentionally told him is there is now a self. When Adam and Eve had no separation, their nakedness had no bearing on their relationship to the world around them, because there was only unity.
Yeah.
It all just was as it was. In order to be aware of your nakedness, you have to be aware of the self. And they were only aware of the one. It was all, it just was.
Good.
It was you and me and God in this garden, and it was all just the one big, beautiful thing. But Adam's response to God betrayed the arrival of the self. That I have become aware of the character's condition. Basically, what Adam told God in that moment is, that the character felt uncomfortable. And there hadn't been a character before.
No.
Because there was no separation.
There was no separation, yeah.
And so when he said I was afraid because I was naked, that wasn't the I that walked with God in the garden that was speaking. That was the character speaking. That was the self speaking. Mm-hmm. The separation is already there. Ultimately, I think that what happened was that Adam and Eve walked through the left-hand door to try to get closer to divinity. And so when we read in 1 Kings, the outlay of the temple, what did it say? There's the outer court, there's the inner court, and then leading into the holy place, there's a stairway that enters the door on the right-hand side.
That's key.
Paul says, if you have been raised up with Christ, keep seeking the things above where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. So I think for a lot of us, this analytical approach to trying to figure out what truth is has put us in a position where we are no longer able to sense truth because we are so busy trying to find it by analyzing it. We've lost touch with our ability to know it when we see it.
Yeah.
Because the knowing happens over on that other side. It happens on the right-hand side when suddenly there's peace. You can't find that over in the analytical side. And so
I think we never stop knowing, but we stop recognizing that we know it. It's like we've experienced truth And there has to be a part of us that resonates with it, unless we have like just become so seared, which I believe can't happen. You can have such a level of separation. But like what, I think that's what sin does, is like it numbs us to the fact that we've experienced truth. We've encountered it, but we don't recognize it.
Yeah, I'm not saying we don't know it. I'm saying we don't know that we know it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the knowing is happening over in our heart, and we're stuck over in our brain. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying the knower is more on the right-hand side. That's more in your gut. That's more, how did you know when you met your spouse? But a lot of people can't get there because even though that knowing is working, they're so busy overanalyzing. We call that having commitment issues.
Yeah.
Trauma has them so locked in the analyzation, running all the risk analysis and the projections into the future of scenarios that, yeah, it's not that they don't know. They know, but they don't know that they know anymore. And so you have people falling down endless rabbit holes thinking that they are seeking truth, and the way to find that truth is to keep adding data points. When miles back in the process, they felt it. If they'd stop and realize, they would realize they got sick to their stomach 20 minutes ago. Would have already told them, this is not the branch of the rabbit hole you need to be going down. But they are so scared of missing data that they're still tunneling down into it. And that's all happening over here in this analytical mind. And the knower knows, but they can't get to it because fear has them locked over here in this other side. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Is not that the knower doesn't know, it's that you don't know that the knower knows. You still have that in you, but you've lost your connect to it. And so you have, one of the things that I think we don't realize is, like when Romans 1 says, always learning. Is that Romans 1? We had that discussion the other day. It may be so. Anyway, always learning, yet never coming to a knowledge of the truth. So you asked a question back at the beginning of this episode. What is truth? Were you consciously quoting? I assume you were consciously quoting Pilate.
Yeah.
In John 18, Jesus gets dragged before Pilate. And Pilate is deeply uncomfortable because he is caught between the Jews and the Romans. And they bring Jesus before Pilate, and Pilate says, what accusation do you bring? And they basically tell him, you know us. We wouldn't have brought him to you if he wasn't trouble. What are they letting him know there? We expect a particular outcome.
Sure.
In John 18 and 30. You know, he says, what accusation do they bring? And they said, if he wasn't an evildoer, we wouldn't have brought him to you. So they're letting him know, we have an expectation of what you're going to do here. And Pilate says to them, take him yourselves and judge him according to your law. And they set a further expectation. Well, our law says we can't condemn him to death. So now Pilate definitely knows what is expected of him. A guilty verdict and a death sentence. Verse 33, Pilate goes into the praetorium and summons Jesus and says to him, Are you the king of the Jews? The missing data there is obviously they told him that the charge was him claiming to be the king, which is what they felt would get him killed in a Roman court.
It's like that should trigger you.
Right, right. What does Jesus do? He says,
Are you saying this?
on your own initiative, or did others tell you about me? Jesus is trying to help Pilate get in touch with his knower. What sent you down this rabbit hole? Why are you asking me this? And if Pilate had been really honest there, he wouldn't have just said, because he gets defensive.
Yeah.
I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priest delivered you to me. What have you done? Pilate's defensive there. And I believe, tell me if you see something different, but I believe Pilate picked up what Jesus was laying down there. Are you saying this on your own initiative, or did others tell you about me? What Jesus is getting out there, I think, is you're under pressure. You're being blackmailed.
And you know.
And you know. And so Pilate comes back with his defensive answer, so Jesus gives him the truth. My kingdom is not of this world. Now, bro, implicit in that is the yes, I am a king. Yes, I am the king.
Because only kings have kingdoms.
My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this realm. Antikemi. Therefore Pilate said to him, so you are a king. And Jesus answered, you say correctly that I am a king. For this I have been born, and for this I have come into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice. So Pilate said to him, what is truth? And when he had said this, he went out again to the Jews and said to them, I find no guilt in him. You make the call. So Pilate knew the truth. He stood in the presence of the truth, and he knew the truth. And Jesus didn't let him get away with left-braining the knowing into silence. Jesus knew what the outcome was going to be. I think he was reaching for Pilate's soul there.
In that moment, yeah.
He's making sure Pilate goes away from this situation knowing that he knew. And I think when Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, what a lot of people don't realize is that right down the middle of our brain, there's this thing called the corpus callosum, the large body. It has hundreds of millions of connecting points to both sides of the brain. And it has, I think, 8 bridges, big bridges that handle the big signals. It communicates between the two halves, and it coordinates this interplay between the two. And not only that, but at the kind of back here somewhere, right there in the middle, where that corpus callosum is, and then you get to a point and there's these 2 big glands, your pituitary gland and your what do you call it? Pineal gland. And a great example of how our brains process, if you're struggling with something, when you go to sleep at night, why do we say, let me sleep on it? When you go to sleep at night, that pineal gland is going to release melatonin.
Activates, yeah.
And begin to produce a dream state in you. And when the self is finally
At rest.
And not handling affairs. A lot of times what happens is this left brain and this right brain wrestle through the night, right by the pineal. And when you wake up in the morning, the knower knows. Because they found a way to coordinate the gifts, everything that this side and this side bring to the table came into alignment. And what happened? You woke up in the morning single-minded. We're going to buy the house. I'm going to marry that girl. We're going to start the company. We're going to sell the car. I'm going to call my dad. You woke up in the morning single-minded because you finally got the self out of the way. And the wrestling match took place. And you were reborn. It's a new you. You have clarity. And you have a single mind. And the Bible is teaching us at the metaphorical, at the allegorical level, the Bible is teaching us that that gate that you come in at is over there where the knower lives, that you're going to have to feel truth. Before he left, Jesus told the disciples in John 14, so just back a couple chapters, verse 16, I will ask the Father, and he will give you another helper or comforter, that he may be with you forever. That is the Spirit of truth, the breath of truth, whom the world cannot receive. This realm cannot receive it because it does not see him or know him. What's he talking about? The knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
Because it does not see him or know him. But you know him because he abides with you and will be in you. So for me, bro, I think it's so encouraging to understand that the Holy Spirit, the breath of God that enters the nostrils of the man, is there to enable us to recognize the spirit of truth. I think we forget that the implication of that is that truth is a spirit, and the left brain don't know nothing about spirit.
No.
So what happens, the left brain is not bad. We need it. Jesus appealed to reason many times. We need reason. But we come in at the door of reason looking for God, looking for truth. And that's not the door. You come in the other door. You come in the right side, which is why the first thing you have to do in the outer court is stop moving. Cease activity.
You could say you need to come in the right way.
Right. The right way.
The right way. Yeah.
And once you cease activity, then you have to go through a door. And that door is about silencing thought. So the way into the place where truth resides inside of you it's not just that you have to get to that place in between the two halves. It matters how you go, whether you'll successfully get there. And the protocol is to come in that right-hand door, which means at some point, you're going to have to be able to feel the truth. You're going to have to be able to resonate and know. Analyzing will be very helpful as long as that's not where you're coming from. It enables you to interact with a lot of the issues you're dealing with. But if you come at it from that point of view, you can only find lots of facts. If you come in through the right door, when Jesus says, I am the way, I believe what we're supposed to draw from that is two things. One, follow my example, do it how I do it. But the other is, for believers, rest in me. Understand that I will not leave you as orphans. I won't leave you without a father. That fear in you that says, what if I get this wrong? What if I'm misunderstanding? What if that fear is a fear of being orphaned, of being left without a father, that our father will abandon us to hell. And in order to overcome that, we have to rest in him. Otherwise, we'll do like Pilate. We'll look truth in the eyes and ask it what truth is.
What is it? What is it? Man, that's good. With that being said, because we haven't forgot about Leviticus, but I want to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want us to use that as like a small launching point for how we can really understand what we're reading from a often misunderstood passage of scripture that we kind of skip by. And this is how we use truth as the lens that will peer through it. And now let's get to the meat, so to speak, of some of the texts that we have read. I know that I have read, and I have struggled at times to kind of like parse through some of the imagery, excessive violence, all of the above, and maybe kind of miss some of the deeper meanings that we can kind of draw out from how we approach a holy God. And he's kind of giving us a blueprint of how he expects to be interacted with. And I think it's so funny that we kind of left off with the experience that Pilate, he's literally standing in the presence of the Most High God, and he doesn't understand what he's looking at, what he's experiencing. Even though his knower, I believe, knows. Even though he's had, his wife is warning him because she's experiencing dreams. And so he's had adequate amount of, I guess you could say, warnings that, hey, this man that you're encountering is different, you know? And yet he still kind of walked away from that experience, choosing to literally wash his hands of it and kind of putting the onus on the religious leaders. But when I read something like Leviticus,
and not to demonize the left brain, but just to reiterate that that's what was tripping him up.
Mm-hmm.
Pilate was problem solving very dicey politics.
like real time.
Real time.
Yeah.
he was in an impossible situation.
Yeah.
And so it was he couldn't sit with the truth because the risk calculations were off the charts. So I think that's kind of Pilate's struggle there was he couldn't stop interacting with truth from the analytical risk management perspective. And so it didn't enable him to live in the truth he was looking at.
I love that you said that because I think that almost perfectly encapsulate how we read something like Leviticus.
100%.
It's like our brain kind of gets locked in. It could only mean one thing. And we really stop ourselves from like mining the depths of like a text that's as theologically rich as Leviticus. Like the level of detail that is put inside this text is for a reason. And it's not just because our God is sadistic in butchering his own creation. But I'm going to let you kind of like really unpack it just because it's a beautiful thing when you start to like understand it from this level of thinking, why this is so important for our understanding. Like, I think understanding Leviticus is fundamental for your spiritual growth.
I think so. In a way more practical way than people realize. You know what I mean? Like in a very like you can apply it to your life kind of way Leviticus applies.
Where you want to start at?
Let's see here. I mean, when you come to the book of Leviticus, let's say you're doing your 12-month Bible reading, and you read verse 1 of chapter 1, verse 1 and 2, maybe. Then the Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, When any man of you brings an offering to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of animals from the herd or the flock. If his offering is a burnt offering from the herd, he shall offer it a male without defect. Probably you get about that far in, and something in your brain goes, why am I reading this? Because you ain't never walked into church. You know what I mean?
And if you have, I have other questions.
Yeah, if you have, you need to find a different church.
Yeah.
And been like, does that lamb have a defect that they're gutting at the altar? That's a different kind of church. What's funny is when you get there, you're turning the page from the end of Exodus where the tabernacle has been put in place and
the glory of the Lord is now resting upon it. Yeah.
Right. The cloud of the glory of the Lord, covers the tent and the very last words for throughout all their journeys, the cloud of the Lord was on the tabernacle by day, and there was fire in it by night in the sight of all the house of Israel. And then you turn the paper, and it's like, the Lord called to Moses from the tent of meeting and was like, hey, when you come to kill animals here, and you're like,
wait, what?
First of all, Leviticus it just means pertaining to the Levites. So we can learn something right there from the title, which means this is information pertaining to those charged with the care and stewardship of the Lord's house, of the tabernacle, of the temple. Well, if we already understand that we are the temple of the living God and that we have been made priests in a different order, because this was the order of Aaron, our high priest is Jesus after the order of Melchizedek.
Which Hebrews does such a wonderful job of
Right.
pointing us to.
But nonetheless, priests are stewards of the temple, of the tabernacle. And so this is instructions to a different order of priests and Levites, of stewards of the house of God, which is interesting because we're a different order and we're stewarding a different tabernacle, but we have in common with them that we are priests and we are charged with the care, the stewardship of the temple of God. So I think right away, if you read the title like this pertained to these guys thousands of years ago, not super helpful. If you grasp the commonality there, you can start to think, all right, it might be interesting to know how the Lord instructed other custodians of his house in how to take care of it. But we do have a challenge, which is how do we know the difference between their ministry and our, like, how do we relate their experience to our experience?
Right.
And so I think I can find this pretty easily. Hold on. Oh. Okay, there we go. Galatians 4:24, talking about Old Testament people, in this case, Abraham, Sarah, Hagar, says this: which things are an allegory? For these are the two covenants, the one from Mount Sinai, which gendereth bondage to bondage, which pertains to bondage, which is Hagar. And then here, let me get it out of the King James, because that's a little. This is allegorically speaking. For these women are two covenants, one proceeding from Mount Sinai, bearing children who are to be slaves.
It's Hagar.
She is Hagar. Now this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia and corresponds to the present Jerusalem, for she is in slavery with her children. But the Jerusalem above is free. She is our mother. So, Paul just dropped a massive component of the key of knowledge right there. Because he didn't say, first of all, he uses the word allegory, and we probably have people that haven't seen the other episodes. So allegory is to speak openly about something else. And we may have used this exact same example the last time we said it, but when you say, I don't know if anyone else's parents said this other than mine, but my parents would say, little pitchers have big ears. So if my mom or my dad said something about a topic that the other one deemed inappropriate to discuss in front of me, one of them would say, little pitchers have big ears. You know the ear of a pitcher? And so that was their way of saying, we shouldn't talk about this right now. But if you take it literally, it's completely nonsensical for one person to say, we're behind on the electric bill, and the other person to say, little pitchers have big ears, is completely nonsensical if you take it literally. But if you understand allegory, that we're speaking openly about something else, now you can start to pick up what they're laying down. Mm-hmm. Is it just one parent saying to the other parent, hey, the kids are here?
Yeah, that's good.
So that's allegory. So Paul says, speaking of Hagar and Sarah and Abraham, this is allegory. And then he doesn't say Hagar is like the Mount Sinai covenant, or these women are like he says, for these women are two covenants. The one was made at Mount Sinai and pertains to bondage. That is Hagar, which is Jerusalem today. He doesn't say it's like it. He says that's what it is. Mm-hmm. So when we point to the fall story, the fall in the garden, and we say, this is telling you about people choosing the wrong door to try to approach the knowledge of God, we have foundation to apply that kind of hermeneutic, that kind of thinking to Scripture. Mm-hmm. How did Paul know it was an allegory? Because it's an allegory. Yeah. It doesn't mean it didn't literally happen. Right. It might well have literally happened exactly the way that it's described. Uh-huh. But their life was an allegory. Those people's lives were allegory for a deeper truth. It was God speaking openly about something else. So if we can take that understanding and apply it,
yes, sir,
then all of a sudden we find God calling to Moses from the tent of meeting, from the door of the tent of meeting. We can say, wait a second, I have a tent of meeting in me, and it has a door. We were just talking about this door. And Jesus said, I am the door. And God had something to say to the heirs of Israel, and it was about when you bring an offering to the Lord, you shall bring an offering of animals from the herd or the flock, which kind of reminds me of Cain and Abel. Going all the way back there, we had Abel bringing from the flock. So do you have any thoughts about the herd or the flock?
So much. Well, first of all, he says, speak to the sons of Israel. So he's identifying covenant.
Yeah.
First things first.
Heirs to the covenant.
This is covenant.
Yes.
People who are heirs, right? And say to them, when any one of you brings an offering to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of livestock from the herd or the flock, right? This triggers my mind back to when Moses is first talking to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh is like, all right, you can go, but leave your herds and livestock here. Because that's going to be a way that I am going to keep connected to you, right? And Moses said, no. All of our herds and our livestock, they're going with us.
Yes.
Because this is why we are going out to the wilderness to sacrifice unto our God. That's why we're leaving.
Yep.
And understanding that, yes, the Lord is taking them out of bondage ultimately. But the way out of bondage was through sacrifice. Mm-hmm. That's allegory all by itself.
Yes.
The way out of bondage is through sacrifice.
Yes, sir.
That's how we approach God. Or even better, that's how the most holy God approaches us. Comes back, because we serve a God who does not just call us up, he comes down.
Yes.
To call us up. And yes, the livestock of the herd.
That is gold. I mean, just that one observation about God tells Moses to tell Pharaoh, we have to go sacrifice in the wilderness.
Yes.
For 3 days, incidentally.
Right.
So powerful that the way out of bondage is
through sacrifice. Also, it said, it was interesting, the original Pharaoh asked Joseph, what does your family do? He's like, they're herdsmen.
Yeah.
And so, even before that, when all the brothers were lined up and the other Egyptians were eating with them, they had separation, because people who were shepherds, that was considered an abomination.
Right. In that culture.
You cannot get livestock and herds without being a shepherd.
Right.
In order for you to go through the process of sacrificing what God demands, you have to allow yourself to now be the caretaker.
Yes.
The protector. Raising them up. Guiding them. Something that God created. And now, since we are walking in dominion, we cannot be scared of this. We have to take dominion over it and then protect it, raise it up, use it for our benefit, and then when it's time, give it back to God.
Yes.
When it's time, we give that back to God, and that's exactly what Abel did. There is a different level of connection that is found between two living things, two animals, two things that have like the nefesh.
Yep.
As opposed to something that we are more separated from when it comes to the plants and the herbs and the grain, the wheat that we cultivate.
Yes.
It's a difference. Like, there's a level of like separation that I'm sure Cain was able to have. It's a lot different chopping down some barley.
Yeah.
And dropping it on the stone
less.
altar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Barley's not screaming at you. It's not leaking blood either.
Right.
But to a shepherd whose first instinct is to be a protector, and I'm caring for the sheep or this livestock, and now it's time for me to go to God, and now I'm to approach a most holy God. How do I do that? Select the best from your herd. Without spot, wrinkle, or blemish. This is what you would prize. God says, that belongs to me.
Come on, man.
You slaughter it. What is most important to you? And this is even going down. Now, I'm going to let you jump back in.
No, bro.
This is just some things that I'm just drawing out of text even as I'm reading it right now. But you get down to the point where you start to understand how God was classifying clean and unclean animals. And you see the fish that have the fins. They're classified as clean animals, the scales, right? Then you have the herds, which are chewing the cud and the cleft foot, whatever. These are of the earth, so that like they have clear classifications.
Yes.
God's identifying, okay, we have clear groups and clear classifications of these animals that I'm considering clean. Then you have the hybrids, the birds that are predator birds, or you have shellfish.
Yes.
Or you have things like pigs, which have the clefts, but they don't chew the cud, right?
Yep.
These are considered unclean animals. animals. And you're not offering those unto God. And he's saying you're not even supposed to let that enter into your temple, which is interesting because he says your temple, it's not good enough to enter into your body. What makes you think that I want that to be offered in my temple?
Right.
So, yeah, this is some observations from like the first
I mean,
3 verses of Leviticus, how we can look at that and automatically like come with a different understanding of what we're reading.
well, that's the thing. That's the point. We'll talk about this for a little bit, and then we'll probably call it. I don't think we'll get very far.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the point. I want people to experience a little bit of what it feels like to learn to approach the things of the Most High through the door that allows the analytical mind to be counterbalanced by the Spirit of truth, that allows you to feel the truth of a thing. And the analyzer is almost then, bro, if I could put it this way, if you and I were to sit here and have a left brain discussion about this, we're going to go, and this is good, and we need this discipline along with the rest of everything.
Yeah.
But we're going to wind up, deep in commentaries, citing historical sources.
Yeah.
We're going to read reams of information, historians, rabbis, theologians, and have potentially even a productive discussion, but a lot of it's going to center around a lot of very technical stuff. And in its place, that's beneficial or can be. And actually is necessary. But when we're having a discussion like this, we're letting the Spirit of God teach us stuff that, and I've had this experience over and over, if you decide to go back and analyze it some, what happens is that left brain analytical mind then becomes kind of like a safeguard. Because if you ever get too loosey-goosey with it, that side will come in and be like, hey, bud, probably could color a little more inside the lines over here. But that is a beneficial usage of that part of us. But it is kind of meaningless if it doesn't happen within the context of diving deep and drinking from these wells of truth.
Yeah.
So right here, one of the things we could look at is, what are flocks and herds? Well, in this context, because flocks and herds can mean a couple different things. But in this context, I think we're dealing with basically sheep and goats, but sheep and cattle. Those are the two big images that are being drawn here. And actually in the ancient mindset, my understanding is that there wasn't, for instance, that much difference between a ram and a bull. So, yes, they understood the species classification, but a ram could be used to symbolize a bull, a male goat could be used to symbolize a ram. They were talking about the males of these species. But especially unique is the subtle difference between a flock of sheep and a herd of cattle. A flock of sheep is not helpless, but they're very dependent and very prone to needing the shepherd.
Yeah.
And fairly meek as compared to cows, in my experience. Sheep are softer, gentler, more subtle. Can be a little goofy too.
Yeah.
And maybe it was because I only ever had a couple sheep at a time, but quite clingy. Like they really want the shepherd's presence. Whereas it's not that I never have dealt with a cow that was affectionate. They can be, but they're not shadowing you for the most part. Yeah. The bonds form in all kinds of contexts, but cows are very strong and self-reliant in many ways, and they draw different images. And so the ancients would look at sheep and see the tender, humble, dependent aspects of the human soul that are very dependent on the voice of the shepherd for clarity and for direction. And they would look at cattle, especially if you study ancient cattle. What was that form of cow that has gone extinct? Cattle. I can't think of the name of it right now. We find a lot of fossils of it in Europe. Ancient cattle sometimes were extraordinarily large, and I mean, here in the American West, we have bison, and those are, cattle are impressive, very strong, and very capable. So this is drawing an image in my mind of the most important commandment. When you come to bring an offering to the Lord, you shall offer him all of your tenderness, all of your dependency, all of your submission, and all of your strength, all of your capability, and all of your power. So could this image be drawing on, you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your might, with all of your strength?
That's good.
When you come to bring an offering to the Lord, bring an offering from the herd or the flock. Come to him with a component of your nature that needs to go to the altar, that needs to be transformed, purified in fire.
A living sacrifice now.
So we're really talking here, I think, at an allegorical level, like Paul.
That's so good.
At an allegorical level, God is telling Moses, make sure you bring me the best of your soulishness and the best of your strength, the best of your dependency and your submission, and the best of your capability and your power. If his offering is a burnt offering from the herd, so a cow, he shall offer it a male without defect. He shall offer it at the doorway of the tent of meeting, that he may be accepted before the Lord. So, a male without defect. Why do you think that matters? I mean, someone could say very simply, like, well, we're pointing to Jesus. Granted.
Yeah. I mean, what I could imagine is that the male is the giver of life. The male has the seed, and that needs to be uncorrupted.
Right.
Which goes back to the garden again.
Yeah. In Genesis 6.
Yeah.
I heard a rabbi say one time that the reason we refer to God as he is not because we think God has a gender identity in the way that we do. We're aware that that's not the case.
Right.
Like, we understand that each of us as human beings is only half of the image of God in some way, right? Mm-hmm. But he said the reason that we refer to God, and I don't buy wholesale everything a rabbi says at all, but this was helpful. He said the reason that we refer to God in the masculine is because of the nature of our relationship to God. Because in nature, everything is coupled up in masculine and feminine. Everything. It's literally give and take. That's nature, and plant and nurture, and sow and receive. And so he said the nature of our relationship to God is that God is the giver and we are the receiver. God brings the seed and we nurture what comes from it and produce fruit with it. Mm-hmm. And in ancient metaphorical thought, the masculine was action, mm-hmm. and the feminine was thought and emotion. So when he says, bring a male without defect, we can think of the best,
most pure action
of all that we could produce.
Yeah.
Is dedicated to God, meaning I'm trying to order my approach to the presence of God such that God gets the purest form of all that I can produce before I do anything else. I'm yielding my ability to produce to God. And the the masculine impulse in humanity is kind of key to the image of God in us, because God is the creator and he vested in us the ability to create. And so if we're saying of all that I can create, I am returning the best of that impulse, of that product to him, it's telling us something about how we order our lives relative to the one that lives in this temple.
And again, I don't want us to forget, this is speak to the sons of Israel.
Yes.
This is speaking to covenant relationship. If you consider yourself a part of the covenant,
right,
this is what's required.
Yes. And this message This whole message is to the Levites. So the Levites are supposed to be communicating to the heirs that this is how we do it. So in you, there's a priest, the part of you that is responsible for maintaining the relationship between the heir and the covenant.
Come on.
And you, that part of you is supposed to be reminding the rest of you, hey, when we bring our offering in the tabernacle that we are, we're bringing the best of all that we can produce back to our Creator. He shall offer it at the doorway of the tent of meeting, that he may be accepted before the Lord. In order to offer something at the doorway of the tent of meeting, this might sound silly, but you have to go to the door of the tent of meeting. Meaning, you can't do this anywhere.
Nope.
When you pray,
That's so good.
go into your inner room,
Close the door.
close the door. Well, how do we get in the door? Oh, you got to offer your production up at the door.
This is why Leviticus is so pivotal. This is how we interact with the most holy God.
It couldn't have more to do with us. And without beating a dead bull,
Yeah.
religion says, hey, we got to figure out all the facts about this ancient story that seems to have nothing to do with us. And we need to understand it as an ancient story about a priesthood that no longer exists, at a tabernacle that no longer exists, ministering with a liturgy that no longer exists. And here's a picture of that, tabernacle, and here's exactly how it looked. And you can spend a lifetime learning all these things and thinking somehow that by understanding those exterior facts, you're going to deepen your interior walk. Jesus told the Sadducees, who were the most left-brained of all the left-brained. I mean, genuinely, that was their whole thing.
Yeah.
They were entirely cerebral.
Yeah.
I joke, and please, no offense to anybody, but sometimes I have joked around with our congregation that the Sadducees were the Presbyterians. But I'm kidding. I love our Presbyterians.
Yeah, right.
I'm just saying, though, they had a very robust, analytical approach.
Yes.
Maybe I shouldn't say Presbyterians. Maybe I should say they were all John Calvin.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be more fair, honestly. And so Jesus said to them, you search the scriptures because you think that in them you have life, but the scriptures point to me. So the most Antikemi thing we can do is search Jesus to find out about the scriptures.
He's the key that's going to lock in it all.
The most Antikemi thing we could do is go in to the inner sanctum of ourselves, the place where God lives, inside of us, cease our activity, cease thought, cease all that, cease analyzing, and allow the priesthood to interact with the presence until we're transformed on the inside, and then we will project truth out into the world around us, not the other way around. We don't have to get it all figured out here in order to get it aligned in here. It won't work. Jesus didn't say if you clean the outside of the cup, the inside will be clean too. Why? Because it won't. Have you ever cleaned the outside of a cup? Did the inside get clean? Absolutely not. You can run it underwater, wipe it down. You got to get in there.
Yeah.
But when you clean the inside, the overflow cleans the outside.
Naturally.
So this way of approaching the scriptures is actually more conducive to producing what we all want anyway, which is to know. My daughter said to me, we were having a deep conversation basically about this. How do you know truth? Mm-hmm. And with great passion and tears of sincerity, I said to her, what do you want most of all? And with the most passion I've ever seen her speak with, she said, I want to know God. I want to know who he is. I want to know him. And I want to know the truth. Mm-hmm. I said, well, girl, you're set. Because that was real. That flowed out of the core of her being. I want to know who he is. I want to know him. And I want to know the truth. But the temptation for me is to try to get her on board with all of the exterior accoutrements of our religion when he's already working on the inside of her. He's already brought her to the point where the thing she wants the most is to know who he is, to know him, to know truth. Mm. And so this way of approaching it, bro, to read this and say, what does this say about what's happening on the inside of me? And then let that inform what we understand about what it says about what was happening with them 4,000 years ago. Offer it at the tent of meeting, at the door, so that you can be accepted. Again, flashing back to Cain and Abel, how do you get accepted? So part of that is you got to go to the door of the tent of meeting that you may be accepted. He shall lay his hand on the head of the burnt offering, that it may be accepted for him to make atonement on his behalf. What do you think about that, bro? So when you bring this offering, you want to lay your hand on that phone? You bring it from the herd, a male without defect, offer it at the doorway of the tent of meeting that you may be accepted. He shall lay his hand on the head of the burnt offering, that it may be accepted for him to make atonement on his behalf. What do you think about that statement?
Which part?
He shall lay his hand on the head of the burnt offering, the one who brings it, that it may be accepted for him to make atonement on his behalf.
No, I'm just saying, like, what part of that verse? Like the laying of the hand, the fact that he's laying the hand on the head, the
whole thing, because it's that precise.
Yeah.
There's a reason it's drilling down like that. Let's start with the lay his hand. Why lay his hand?
Well, whenever I see that's always an impartation.
Right.
There's a level of connection that needs to happen.
Right.
There's a level of tangible connection, that this is not something that is experience detached from the sacrifice. There is something that needs to be physically encountered for whatever transfer to take place.
Yeah, because laying on of hands does deal with impartation.
Right. And I even see that as from, we're looking at the patriarchs in Genesis. Whenever they're applying their blessings, they're laying their hands. Even so much that Joseph was like, hey, Dad, you got the hands mixed up. He's like, no, Jacob said, I got it. I'm intentionally allowing this to happen as far as the impartation with his right hand, right? On the head of the burnt offering, I think that feels very self-explanatory. It's like this is starting at the core. We're talking about the left brain, right brain. You are laying your hand on the head.
Right.
The very top, the crown.
Right.
Of this sacrifice. And so the place where all of logic and thinking is taking place, the life, that's where you are applying.
And the emotions.
Yeah.
It's all taking place right there.
You're applying that pressure on that so that it may be accepted. That's very interesting.
Because that's the second time. But first time it says you have to do it at the door of the tent of meeting so that it may be accepted. Now it says lay your hand on the head of it so that it may be accepted for an atonement on his behalf, on the giver's behalf.
Outside of like the very obvious reason why you're doing this, the fact of atoning, it's now acting as the substitute. And so it's now giving it its official purpose. It's not dying for no reason.
Right. The dictionary definition of atonement, I'm assuming, is, let me see, let me just make sure. Because sometimes it's a little difficult or a little challenging to define the difference between atonement and redemption. Atonement is reparation for a wrong or injury. Reparation for a wrong or injury. So we're talking about that it may be accepted as reparations on behalf of the one who brings it. Reparations for what? For a particular grievance, right?
Yes.
So you said laying on of hands is transference. Let me push on that. Transference of what?
Guilt.
Yeah. Certainly by extension, yeah. To me, the imagery here is really strong. You got to take your fivefold nature, your sensory nature, and go to the place where the problem lives, where the division lives, where the separation exists, the head. You got to lay that fivefold nature on the head where the separation that has caused the fragmentation in that nature lives. Put your hand on the head of it, and now it will be accepted on your behalf as at one-ment. We're talking about undoing the separation that came from the fall through the way the sensory nature interacted with the mind. That Eve stood at the base of that tree and
took her hand.
Saw. There it is. She saw, she sensed that the tree was pleasant to the eyes and good for food that she could taste and desirable to make one wise. And she put forth her hand and took and ate. And what happened? Separation. Eve and Adam separated from each other, but they also, and of course they separated from God, but they separated from themselves. All the other separation was a consequence.
And that goes back to that whole toxic unity, because they were almost one flesh
Right.
in that moment. And that was a problem.
Right. They were in a total agreement.
Total agreement.
On separation.
Yes.
Which is why the whole "who told you were naked" is so telling. Because the separation had produced an unwelcome guest at the party, which was the self. Before there was a self, there was no awareness of nakedness, therefore no separation. As soon as the self came to the party, they were immediately separated from within, separated from the source, and separated from each other. And ultimately separated from that whole realm of consciousness of what? Oneness. And so, yes, atonement is reparations, but at the most literal level of what the word actually is, at one meant. So in order for this sacrifice to be accepted, it has to be the right thing, first of all. In this case, we're dealing with produce and strength and the ability to bring forth and co-create with God, taking the best of that and bringing it to the door of the tent of meeting, which means you have to enter within, and then offering it there by laying your sensory nature on the head where the division and the separation came in. And now it is accepted on your behalf as at one-ment. We're undoing the separation here. That's what this whole ritual is. He shall slay the young bull before the Lord, and Aaron's sons, the priests, shall offer up the blood and sprinkle the blood on the altar that is at the doorway of the tent of meeting. So he shall slay the young bull. I mean, crucifying the flesh is basically the whole mission of a Christian. As somebody said to me today, Jesus said, "Take up your cross and follow me." And they were quoting Bishop Kilgore, who used to say, people put so much emphasis on carrying your cross. He said, "Take up your cross and follow me." People put so much emphasis on the carrying the cross. I'm following Jesus. I have to suffer through this. And they forget to lay down on it and die. The power of it is not in the suffering of it. The power of it is in the being united with him in the fellowship of his death. Yes, the suffering is a component of that. But ultimately, the death of that nature, that separated nature, that fragmented nature is what God was after. Forget the graphic visuals of this. It's very graphic, but it's just trying to tell you how, when Jesus said, strive to enter the narrow door, the narrow gate, it's just trying to tell you how intentional and focused and unrelenting and methodical and ultimately brutally committed you're going to have to be to get that fragmented nature back where it needs to be to come to at one-ment.
And you have a different level of buy-in when there's literal blood on your hands.
Right. And the blood is there to witness, to testify.
Because that's what the life is.
Yeah, that a life has been laid down so that a new life can be brought forth. He shall then skin the burnt offering and cut it into pieces. I mean, we could, now we're going to get into the fire on the altar and the wood, but just touching on the skin, I mean, talk about Eden imagery.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw that in your eyes.
Yeah. Especially since they decided they were going to put on the covering to cover their nakedness that they were now aware of.
Right.
And the Most High is like, let me do this right. And provided them skins.
I mean,
skins are still necessary.
all of this is going to go on the altar and be burnt.
Yeah.
And yet God is saying, skin it and cut it into pieces. To me, at least partially, he's wanting you to dismantle this thing fully and systematically so that you can identify every part of what you are laying down and inviting him to consume. This identity, this egoic identity, this skin that you wear that makes you feel prepared to face the world, this flesh that makes you feel like you have what it takes, dismantle it. Separate it out, lay it on this altar, strip it bare, so that you can know what I am consuming.
Man, we got to wrap up, but I will say what observation that I just made when I was recently reading Leviticus was in verse 7. The sons of Aaron, the priest, shall put fire on the altar and arrange wood on the fire.
Yes, sir.
That's so counterintuitive to how we build fire.
Right.
We put the wood down first, and then we add the fire because we need fuel for the fire.
Right.
Here, God is saying, add fire to the altar. And once the fire is going, then you add the fuel.
You know what that fire is that they're adding to the altar there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the coals that they could never let go out.
Right. that have been burning.
the fire of God.
Yeah.
So they're laying down the coals, adding the fuel, and draping the flesh on it. The fire of God that only He can ignite, that He sends in response to a ordered, protocoled way of approaching His presence. We don't have to light it. It's there. He put it there. It will be there when we need it. And that's one of the ways we know we're hitting on truth. Because, man, if anybody's ever experienced it, they know what we're talking about. When you begin to lay down your life and let Jesus, let the Most High inhabit the temple that we are, you begin to burn with a righteous zeal that begins to remove the impurities, and you don't like that. That's Him. And you know that. You know you didn't put that there. You didn't have it before, and you have it now. I think we need to spend more time trusting that the pillar in the cloud, that the fire that He ignited in us when we first believed, that will carry the day. When it's all said and done, we will only know Him. We will only know the truth, because He will burn everything else away. In this current environment where we're living in a hall of mirrors, and everything is so distorted and there's so much coming at us, we have to recover the ability to go in through the narrow gate on the right-hand side where the fire lives, where the abiding presence of God knows the Spirit of truth. We can stop sifting endlessly through facts, desperately trying to dig to the bottom of rabbit holes, and recover our ability to trust Jesus, to trust the Holy Spirit, and be able to know when we know.
Yes.
I'm just starting to become aware of that again, where I'm starting to be like, oh, I can stop trying to dig a hole to China. I can rest here. He has shown me what I need to know down this rabbit hole for now, and be at peace. So one of the ways we can know truth is by getting to know truth, by coming to know. All Pilate had to do was go to lunch with Jesus, and he would have known truth, because he would have known him.
Yeah. That's just the first 7 verses of Leviticus.
Leviticus is all about you, us,
right?
Our relationship with Him.
Right. that's just a small little mini Bible study on how you could recalibrate your knower to interface with truth and truly know when you've encountered it, and then use that as the Rosetta Stone, so to speak, to unlock the mysteries all throughout your Bible, especially on harder to understand passages like Leviticus. And don't just look at it from the lens of historical and cultural facts.
Right.
And miss what the Lord is trying to unlock in each and every one of us. Man, that is good.
And don't worry, when we're not wearing him out 18 hours a day, Brewster will be back to saying more. When I get to the end of these and I'm like, bro, I talked so much. And then I remember, well, we're on an hour and a half of sleep and only I know how to function like that.
It's not really that, so to speak, is that, like, man, I'm encountering real time some of these, like,
Me too, bro.
deep
Like,
revelations that are like leaping off the page, and the Holy Spirit truly has been our teacher in these conversations, and I believe the value that we're adding in these conversations are really being shown real time to us first, and by the time that it gets, produced and put out there, the world's getting a chance to kind of see how we interface with truth and how we make that to be the forefront of what we seek after, what we treasure, and what we pass down to those who we are responsible for.
and that's what I'm hoping, bro. More than anything, I hope that somebody will kind of pick up some of just the approach, so that when you're reading the Bible, you can start to go, or reading the news, you can start to go, wait, I think this might be about that, and trust it a little, go research it, and be like, yeah, it is about that. And then you'll know it's true because it came to you before you had the data points.
Right. I love it. Well,
I'm playing, bro. I just feel like I talked for 4.5 hours.
we love it when you talk for 4.5 hours. It's worth the price of admission.
Love you.
Live Antikemi, y'all.